And joining us this morning is Elizabeth Trudeau, the Acting Assistant Secretary, Bureau of Global Public Affairs. All right, so tell us a little bit to our audience of yourself and what you do.
It's a fancy title, so I appreciate that, Joan. Well, one, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. I think, as many of your viewers know, I graduated from the University of Kansas, the William Allen White School of Journalism, so it's wonderful to be back and actually talk about what my job is and how KU set me up for success on that. So I work for the U.S. Department of State. I work for Tony Blinken, and I'm a U.S. diplomat. I'm a career Foreign Service officer. And the Bureau, which I lead, Global Public Affairs, is 350 people in 8 locations around the world. And what our job is to advance U.S. foreign policy through messaging and information. And that's everything. If you hear about our foreign policy, it's our team who produces that. So that's from videos to tweets, it's from special events to the Secretary's travel, to coming out and talking to all of you.
That's great, that's great. So what do you think is one of the biggest challenges in your work with marginalized populations?
It's a great question, and actually it really ties into the work that you guys are doing here at KU. Is the information environment is contested space. Not only state actors like Russia and the PRC, but also the idea that the media environment and the economic conditions of the media environment are in a tough place around the world. In the United States, of course, but on the continent of Africa, in Central Asia, across the Western Hemisphere, in South America. So what you see is marginalized communities are the ones who often lose out because their stories aren't told. And the way you advance policy is really through storytelling. The way you make people care about issues is making them understand it in their heart, make it relate to them. And so what we see happening a lot with marginalized communities is us and our job at the State Department is making sure that people hear those stories and they hear the truth about those stories, whether it's Russia's war in Ukraine or those people impacted by food insecurity, is making sure that they have a platform, they have an audience, and they have a voice.
Absolutely.
Beautifully said. And what do you find is one of the biggest challenges in your work with marginalized populations?
I think one of the things that we find is making sure that we aren't speaking for them, but providing platforms for people to speak for themselves. We are very lucky that not only does my bureau have offices overseas in Johannesburg and Dubai and Bangkok, but that we work with our embassies and consulates in every country around the world who go out and do programs working with our partners in international development or with the Peace Corps in allowing people to tell their own stories and tell those stories to the American people, because American taxpayers deserve to know what their foreign policy is.
Absolutely. So I know you talked a little bit about how it's important to tell the stories of the marginalized populations. So what have you found to be the easiest or best tactic in doing so?
It's a great question, and it's something I think really that you guys are thinking a lot about here is, what's the platform? Where are people getting their news? And it depends on what country, and it depends on what region. So I personally have served in Pakistan. WhatsApp is an enormous platform there. It's where people get their news, and it's who they trust. So they may not believe something on television, they may not believe something they read in their newspaper, but if their aunt sends them something on WhatsApp, well, that's credible. So the question is how do you present information in a way that people can digest and that they understand? You know, in other countries in the world, it might still be Facebook. That might be the medium where people get news. It might be TikTok. It might be a traditional newspaper. We were in Uzbekistan recently. Newspapers are a big deal there. So are we working with columnists and journalists? Are we talking about the importance of factual-based news? So it's a great question.
Yeah, great, thank you.
And just to go off of the social media platforms, social media has been a catalyst in many democratizing movements across the globe. However, we are in a moment where one of those platforms is coming under fire. And what are your thoughts on banning TikTok and the security issues surrounding that platform?
Well, TikTok is a national security threat. The president has been very clear on that. So I think the concern is what are you comfortable with your data? I think Americans very much prize the idea of privacy and independence. I think it's a choice that everyone makes. For the federal government, we don't use TikTok.
Yeah. And that makes sense, absolutely. So media discourse in the present moment has contributed to some of the political divide in our democracy. How do you find news media helping or hurting your work on a global scale?
I love this question because we all come to it with our own histories. And news media, if you're a journalist who works at a daily, television station or a local television station, or someone who does spot reporting, or sports journalist or a big broadcaster or a business news, you always bring your own viewpoint. I think as the news media, you have to understand your power in that. You have to understand what your own filter is and then course correct. I'm not saying that your own opinion cannot be part of it if it's properly labeled, because I know they teach ethics at the J School. But the idea is balance, not both sidesism, because there are truths. And the news media has got to be the front line of democracy. It has got to be the watchdog, not only for the American people, but for journalists in whatever country you're in. You are where the rubber hits the road. If they cannot believe the media, either talking about government or corruption or conflict or environmental degradation, who do they believe? So I think the question of polarization, media can't feed into it, but it can't shy away from it either. You just need to understand what your own bias is as you come in and accurately reflect the truth.
Great. So I have a follow-up question on
Please.
that. For you, being a William Allen White journalism major here, how have you been able to hold in your political beliefs or your beliefs in general and to remain relationships with other countries when you're doing your global public affairs?
Well, what I would say is I learned here at the J School is facts matter. Absolutely. At the end of the day, it's you and it's the facts, and you've got to live with them. And that's absolutely something being in Lawrence taught me. It's this school has always prided itself on teaching journalism and communications as a craft, and I think that's a fantastic skill. Representing other countries around the world, it's such a deep pride in representing the United States. Wherever you go in the world, you've got the flag of the United States behind you, and it's an honor. Sometimes it feels a little intimidating, but you remember that. You get up every day knowing that. And being here and, spending 4 years in this building in Lawrence really set me up for success in that.
Great.
And we're coming just close to being done. But before we leave, you are a former KUJH
Yes.
alumni from the J School. For people that are wanting to, we all go through different pathways, and people that are interested in going into medias that some like you do, what does it take?
I would love it. I honestly think there is no better background than a journalism degree from KU to join the Foreign Service and join the State Department. Careers.state.gov is the careers website. I'd encourage people to take a look. Just last year, we launched paid internships, which includes housing in Washington, D.C. or overseas.
That's great.
So you can dip your toe in, you can see if you like it. It's the time of year to apply for it. So I would very much encourage people to do it. It's a big world. Lawrence sets you up to explore it. It gives you the skills, it gives you the ethics, it gives you the ground, the base to do it. I would say take that first step.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. We really
We're
appreciate it.
truly honored to have you here today. And Elizabeth, we hope to see you again sometime soon.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you guys.